Welcome from San Diego, California. We are reaching you in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, live through a unique and complex international telecommunications network via satellite, microwave, and cable. The International Training Center at San Diego State University brings us together once again through this original video conference program, which joins distinguished organizations representing education, business, and government in Mexico, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Ecuador, and Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, Argentina, Spain, and the United States of America. We also acknowledge the participation of the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C., and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, located in Geneva, Switzerland. Good day. My name is Dan Hopwood, and I am the moderator for today's program. I'm the Director of Risk Consulting for the professional services firm of Barney & Barney, LLC, located in San Diego. Today, the ITC continues its year 2000 theme of Global Strategies for Excellence, Value and Optimal Performance. We'll do so today by introducing you to concepts and practices essential for the development of organizational excellence, the creation of value, and strategies to optimize performance. This program will uniquely expand your understanding of three critical concepts: excellence, value, and performance. Why is this program unique? Well, we're taking a cutting edge today, an approach in the discussion of intelligence and performance management. For example, our first speaker is the Chief Knowledge Officer for one of the United States' leading technology consulting firms. You'll find that what Kent Greenis shares with us will greatly enhance organizational excellence if you look toward adopting knowledge management as a core competency. Contrasted to the past, organizations will benefit from institutionalizing knowledge as opposed to simply transmitting and hoping for the retention of information. Kent's comments will bridge how knowledge creates excellence and further develops both internal and external values pertinent to an organization's initiatives. Paul Cicco will take us through an engaging journey, a journey that highlights methodologies to ensure optimal personal and organizational performance. More specifically, Paul will detail the elements of optimal performance and discuss their synergistic effects through describing a methodology that he has created. Paul will highlight an applied model, a model that sheds tremendous light on the value Paul's comments will delineate. Let me introduce today's speakers, Kent Greenis and Paul Cicco. Kent Greenis has worked internationally in a variety of engineering, management, and technology roles in the energy industry, including oil field development and operations, geophysical exploration, the application of information technologies for business renewal, teamwork, geostatistics, organizational change, and pioneering the practical application of knowledge management. He has been recognized as the world's leading moneymaker in knowledge management by Fortune magazine. Kent joined SAIC, which is located in La Jolla, California, in May of 1999 to become SAIC's Corporate Chief Knowledge Officer and Senior Vice President for Commercial and International Business. His prior experience includes creating an internationally recognized world-class knowledge management practice, which delivered $260 million to BP Amoco's bottom line in 1998. He previously worked as an international mining consultant, applying geostatistics in the delivery of turnkey engineering projects in Australia and the U.S. for 2 years prior to joining BP. Kent holds an MS degree in geophysics from the University of Arizona. Paul Cicco combines his experience as a manager and as a professional musician in a workshop he has called Team Rhythm. He created and began delivering this workshop in 1991. Team Rhythm was inspired by Paul's live musical performance experience with Bobby McFerrin's Bang Zoom. Among other noteworthy accomplishments, Paul helped compose, coordinate, and perform the opening ceremony of the 1993 USA National Organizational Development Network Conference in San Francisco, California. This dynamic event combined dance, storytelling, and drumming. And by the end of that ceremony, all 800 participants were playing drums and percussion instruments together. Some of Paul's recent Team Rhythm clients have included Oracle, 3Com, Lucent Technologies, Kaiser Permanente, The Gap, and American Express. Mr. Cicco holds an MBA in Organizational Leadership from the John F. Kennedy University in Orinda, California. Gentlemen, welcome to the ITC, and thank you for your participation in today's program. Let's start with an introductory question, and a question today that we hope integrates your individual contributions to the program. Two parts. Can it simply be said that knowledge is the key to performance, and further, is excellence solely performance-based? Ken, I want to come to you with the first part of that question. Is knowledge the key to performance?
Well, since performance is delivered primarily through people, I think we must agree that it's key to performance, although by itself, without applying knowledge and without actually getting people to understand each other and know where that knowledge comes from, I think it would be difficult to rely on just using a word called performance and knowledge to say that it's something that is simple to do. I think what we find mostly working in our businesses is getting people to work together to adapt their collective knowledge to deliver performance, and that's where we're seeing real breakthroughs, where they learn to know each other and share what they know, and together solve problems and come up with new ideas for performance improvement.
Very good. Thank you, Kent. Paul, the second piece of that question. Is excellence solely performance-based?
Well, I think that excellence has a lot to do, performance has a lot to do with excellence, but I don't believe that performance is the only thing that has to do with excellence. There are also aspects related to the integration of a clear vision as well as intelligence and trust, so to be able to actually execute and communicate clearly among the people who are actually performing the task. So the performance really has to do with where the rubber meets the road, but it is the integration of all four of these aspects that really leads to excellence.
Very good, and we're going to hear more on knowledge and performance and team synergies in a moment. And thank you for your answers, gentlemen. Let's begin now with Module 1, in which Kent Greenis will explain the basics of knowledge management and about his experiences in the field. Kent, I want to start today with what I believe are some critical questions for our audience to hear and for you to respond to. And more importantly, when we talk about global intelligence and knowledge management, your background is as a geophysicist. And you had some interesting experiences moving from the geophysicist role into a knowledge management role. Can you give me a little background on that transition?
Sure. For the most part, I started life as a technologist, a scientist.
Okay.
And my experiences were in working on technical issues. And when I moved to Ohio, which was eventually to become British Petroleum, I was brought in as a geophysicist to help people explore and to help find oil in the subsurface. From there, I was fortunate enough to have several different jobs that allowed me to stretch both my scientific knowledge, but more importantly, and I think especially for where I've come to in knowledge management, helped me understand the value of people and being a leader and someone who maybe didn't have all the answers themselves but started to rely on people and their own abilities to help make things happen. One of the first things that changed me was I was brought in to run an oil field in Alaska, which is very different from being a geophysicist who goes out and explores for oil, because you never know if it's ever really found. When you're producing an oil field, you drill a well every month and you know what happens. So I learned a lot about what it really takes to make things happen in the oil business. Most importantly, I had to rely on other people, my team, for their technical know-how.
Take for a moment and kind of give us your short sleeve definition of, if you will, of knowledge management. What is knowledge management?
In my view, knowledge management is being able to take the collective intellect of people on your team, people you work with, whether it's partners and suppliers, and use that to renew a piece of work or to create something new. But in its simplest sense, it's about reusing what other people know, being able to reuse solutions to problems that already have been dealt with in an organization, and then taking that knowledge to do what you're about to do better, faster, cheaper. It's that simple.
When you think of knowledge in those terms, you told me when we were talking earlier that some of the best knowledge managers were the best storytellers. How do we blend that ability to retain information and history into the storytelling sort of structure and make it work in a highly technical environment in developing organizations?
Well, there's no doubt that something needs to drive people to say what's in it for them. Why should they tell stories? Why should they share what they know? And more importantly, why should they use what someone else has shared with them? It takes two sides. And I think the major learning for us over the years has been find a compelling reason for people to change. Either create it if it's not there, or look at a crisis as an opportunity. So if your company's not doing well and your share price has gone down, what is it that you need to know to improve that or make it go up? Or look at it from an opportunistic point of view. You're a new company in a new country or a developing country, and you want to create a new business. What is it you need to know to improve or to create a successful business? So in many ways, you're looking for what knowledge do you need to do something different or improve.
So at the turn of the century, a barrel maker would pass that knowledge on to their son or an apprentice to make sure that the operation persevered and would last.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great corollary. When we think of knowledge management, is it simply technical then?
No, in fact, I think the most reasons that people have not done so well in knowledge management is because they have moved to technology very quickly as the key enabler. In other words, thinking that people can just take some knowledge of someone, put it on a disk, and make it available to people like they're really going to use it. There's a couple things wrong with that. Not only is it difficult to codify what someone knows, but getting someone to actually reuse that and make a difference is a whole other story. They have to want to. They have to understand it. They have to be able to make sense out of what someone has shared with them. So technology has gotten a lot of publicity, and it's an easier thing to touch and feel. So computers and disks and storage mechanisms and file management and document management is the first thing that many people went to say that's like knowledge management. The reality is the people issues and processes are what's key. Getting people to open up and share what they know, to do it in a way that other people can make sense out of it and hopefully use it, requires relationship and trust. And that's the big difference between knowledge and information or data. I can give you some data or information, like the data would be the temperature of this room. And information is over the next 30 minutes, if that temperature goes up, that's information. You take that data, create a trend, and you say, oh, the temperature's going up in this room. The knowledge that would be to say why. Why is that temperature going up? And understanding that if it's going to go up, then maybe I need to take off my jacket, or the next time I come, I'll wear some clothes that aren't as warm.
It's what you do with that knowledge. That's how you respond to it.
That's right.
And that really leads me to a question of how a developing organization or even a developing economy can take knowledge and use something that you said earlier that I think is very critical, and that is the leadership piece. And leadership is part of management. It goes along with the planning and the organizing. Just very quickly, tell us how critical leadership is in the ability to create a knowledge organization.
In my experiences, the ability to create the demand for your people to share what they know and make the time to find other people and let them know what experiences they've had, or to share what solutions they've already made to given problems, is critical, because people have their own job to do. They have their own agenda. People think if they go to work and they do the best they can for their own team, they're doing what they need to do, and they're right. leadership has to show them that there's an opportunity or a need to do something greater, which means that they have to help manage expectations and continuously raise the bar. And that's where I think the link to performance and competency and performance is critical. In British Petroleum and in many of the companies I work with now, including PDVSA, which is the Venezuelan national oil company, they have a very strong performance focus that says, if we produce this much this year, next year we will produce this much more. And that's continuously raising the bar, which means that people need to continuously find new ways of improving. And in doing so, it requires them to start reaching out and find out from others what they know and what they need to know. And then they have to be rewarded for that improvement and that performance.
We'll take that knowledge then and let's move it across to a global stage, if you will. And how does knowledge relate to global intelligence? And perhaps even if I may add on to that, how do you define global intelligence?
Well, I would define it as the collective intellect of people all over the world. I mean, nowadays with technology, especially communication technology, we really do have the ability to tap into other people that aren't just sitting next to us, in the building next to us, in the city next to us, or the country next to us. We can talk to people. Using video conferencing, we can call them on the phone. More importantly, we travel a lot these days. I'm constantly running into people that say, oh, isn't it a small world? And I think a lot of it's because of technology, but a lot of it is also because people are communicating more. They're more open in some ways than they have been in the past. And global intelligence means to me the intellect or the experience that's out there if you choose to tap it, which means it goes beyond just your company's know-how. Who are the partners and suppliers or the contractors and the universities and the people out there that have some know-how in what you're about to do that you could tap into and leverage? And I think that is what's different between knowledge management now and maybe a long time ago. Because if you think of the words knowledge management, people go, whoa, what is that? You're talking about taking my knowledge? What's so new? You and I and anyone out there in the world has been managing their own knowledge quite well, or they wouldn't be where they are. Knowledge management is about tapping the collective or global intellect that's available.
So it's very important that individuals recognize that knowledge management has a tremendous sharing aspect to it.
Of course, and that means the relationship element and getting to know people is probably the most critical thing. To me, if a company or an organization did only one thing, and that was let people get together and talk, they would find themselves way up the learning and performing curve in knowledge management.
Sort of create the organizational water cooler.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Well, how important is it then to be able to create a globally intelligent organization or an organization that utilizes knowledge management quickly? I'm interested in the speed here. Should we be recommending to people that they get on board fast?
Well, I mean, today, if you look at what's going on in the internet or the e-business world, the digital business economy, you don't have a choice. I mean, 1 year in traditional time is now about 1 week or a month on internet time. And it's because there are so many people out there that are being tapped and doing different kinds of work. Your ability to move quickly is paramount if you want to stay not just current but ahead of the game. And let's face it, given that there's limited time, money, and resources, those companies that are able to use what they have and leverage something new are the ones that are going to step ahead of the game. Or more importantly, give them an opportunity to be proactive and not reactive to change. We all know that it's not change that's new, it's the pace of change that is really different. Things are happening so fast, and your ability to seize that change and do something with it and put you in control versus being a victim of it, I think is critical, which means if we can learn quickly from every change that occurs, whether we induce it or others, it puts us in the driver's seat.
Is change the only condition that's necessary to create an effective knowledge organization?
No, in fact, I think change is really is one of the reasons why we have to do it. What's necessary, in addition to the leadership we talked about, is a set of simple processes that would allow people to share what they know, make it available, and do it in a way that's very easy and convenient, because everybody's got plenty of work to do. I think it's also about making the right knowledge available. We don't need more stuff out there. There's too much information as there is. There's a lot of knowledge. It's a strange thing about knowledge. You don't care what you know. I don't care what you know. But when you need it, that's when you want it. And our brains are great at that. We can't yet mimic what goes on in our brain with computers. So the ability to get you the right thing at the right time is critical. And so the systems and the processes that go along with the right leadership and the skills to be able to codify know-how and make it interesting are really what makes up knowledge management.
When you talk about codifying or the codification of knowledge management, are you talking about putting together a book or a manual or?
Well, I would say that what you really need to do is create a very rich collection of insights and experiences, not everything everyone knows, but the few key things that made a difference to them when they did something real. And when I say rich, I'm talking about using multimedia, something that allows someone to see or hear a story or lessons learned in a way that makes them think twice about not using it when they go back out into the real world or on the job.
You were describing for me earlier the steps or the methods, if you will, to implement a knowledge framework. And maybe you can describe those three elements for us.
Sure. The first thing that we've touched upon when we talked earlier, and I've mentioned already right now, is something that I would call some simple learning processes. You've got a team that has a goal, they use their head and they deliver results. That's the way things are. If you add to that 3 simple learning processes to help them learn before they do something, number 1, to help them learn while they're doing something, number 2, and to help them quickly learn after they've done something, number 3, then you've got a series of simple learning processes that builds in the learning and the knowledge management practice on the job and the way they work. And those things can be done very quickly, they're very simple, and they allow you to capture and reuse know-how while you're going through a piece of work so that it's not something extra in addition to your job. It's part of your job.
Now that first, the learning process seems to me to be cyclical. It never really ends. It doesn't have an end point on a timeline. It comes back around.
That's very true. In fact, how we get people to do the third process, which is learning afterward, that's the toughest one. Most people, they can understand why they should learn before doing it. If you make it easy, they'll do it because they know it's going to help them today deliver on a job that they've got to do anyway. Learning on the job, the second process, a technique we picked up from the U.S. Army called after-action reviews, is so quick and simple, people pick it up because, again, they see how it could help them today do better tomorrow. But the third process, learning afterward, something we call a retrospect, a lot of people don't want to take the time to do because they've just finished a piece of work, whether it's good or bad. They're ready to move on or celebrate. So we've tried to build this and make it a celebration process, but also quick enough, take a half a day, that doesn't end up with some 3-inch tome of boring things that don't tell the truth anyway that no one will ever read, but more importantly focuses on a series of questions to help them think about what they just did and often bring out some some new learnings that they can reuse the next time they work. And that's the motivation. It's not to fill the company corporate coffers of knowledge. That's a great thing. For people who are being paid, depending on how well the corporation does, that's one thing. But most people are paid for how well they do their job. So we try and show them how this will help them the next time they do their work.
Okay. If the first of those elements for creating a knowledge framework is learning processes, what's the second element?
The second element is a realization that you don't work alone. And I'm not talking about just your team members, but if you're an engineer or a marketing person or a buyer of products for your company, the fact is there are other people buying products in your company. It's called the procurement function or the procurement practitioners. These are people who do what you do, but they just don't happen to be on your team or work on the project you're working on. It's a realization that there are others out there that do similar things to you. We call those people practitioners in whatever field or subject that you're involved in. The community of practitioners exists whether you want to take advantage of it or not. What we try and do is help people realize there are other people out there So when they've got a job to do on their team and they're trying to deliver on a goal, they're the people that you talk to, the community of people who do the same sorts of things. They're the ones you tap into to help you learn before doing, to help you learn on the job. They're what we would have called a while ago your personal networks, the people you go to when you're in trouble, whether they're on your team or not. The problem is our companies and organizations now change so fast you often don't know who's in that network. So the concept of a community of practice is a group of people who are out there doing similar things, whether they're in your company or not, that have a desire to share what they know because they think there's something in it for them.
Well, that community of practitioners, it is probably an expanding envelope. Your organization, your community,
Yes.
the field that you work in, and now globally.
That's right.
And we have the technology and capability. The third aspect is the knowledge assets.
Yes, I mean, you do have people now who do understand how important it is to learn. And if you give them these learning processes and coach them through it, you find that they are learning on the job, they're doing things better, they're working with other people, communities, because they have knowledge that the local team doesn't have. They're working together. Then you find that you need a place to put this stuff. And a very dynamic repository, something that is always connected to the people who contribute to it, but is accessible because that community and the people on your team are not always going to be there when you need that. So if you're doing a piece of work in a new country, you don't have your fellow practitioners sitting next to you or even accessible same time, same place through technology. So your ability to have codified some of what you've learned or what that community has learned on various projects, jobs, or pieces of work gives you instant access to a collection of know-how and experience as long as it is codified in this rich way that we spoke of earlier, in a way that people can access it quickly, in a way that every bit of knowledge or story that's in there is connected to a real person so that someone trusts it, but most importantly, in a way that it serves as a catalyst to go then seek out the real people who've contributed to it and actually make the time to talk to them, because there's no way that the most current knowledge is ever going to be codified or captured. I don't care how smart we get or how great our technology is or becomes. The most current knowledge will always be in someone's head.
Let's think about it then from the standpoint of the attributes of knowledge management. And what are the attributes? You've done a nice job of defining knowledge management and what's implied with that and what's practiced with knowledge management. But how do we find the attributes of an opportunity to create knowledge management in an organization?
Well, I think if there's anything that I've learned in the knowledge management area, it's the ability to focus in on something that's important to you, a specific need or an opportunity that drives you to want to do something different. And knowledge management is no different than any other thing. When it comes to organizing for success, what you try and do is find what is it out there that I need to be successful.
I'm interested, Kent, in your thoughts on a couple of things. And one is I think we can come up with performance measures for knowledge and initiatives when we're an organization that makes things. Mm-hmm. We sell commodities or we sell products. Mm-hmm. What do we do? How do we measure things if we're an educational institution or a government entity? What do we look for there?
Actually, we look for the same things. We look at what are our outputs, what are our indicators along the way. Is it the number of students that pass a test at a certain level? Is it the proficiency of our teachers? I think anything that you can say is a service or a product or a deliverable must be able to be measured. I mean, if it gets measured, it gets done. The teachings of people like Deming and Shewart and all the continuous improvement folks over the years have taught us that what gets measured gets done. And I believe anything can be measured if you're willing to look for what improvement opportunities are possible. So how would you define success in any situation? And being able to then say, what knowledge do you need to make that happen? What are the gaps between where you are and what knowledge you want to have? And then being able to focus so specifically on the pieces of know-how that would make the difference. And that specificity actually gives you benefits that go way beyond delivering a result. In fact, they're part of the enabler. If I said to you, tell me everything you know about journalism, or tell me everything you know about being a television reporter, you would probably look at me and say, sorry, I can't. That would take me my whole life, or it would take me 10 years. But if I said, tell me what you know about being in front of the camera when you've got this person you're dealing with and they challenge you with this question, that's a specific request for a specific bit of knowledge that you could probably tell me about or be willing to share, because number one, you could do it and still maintain your day job. You could tell me an amount of time that's not going to impact your life. Number two, it's recognizing that you have some specific know-how in a specific area, and that's a recognition thing, which might hopefully make you feel good that someone recognizes you have some know-how that's worth sharing. So specificity is the little secret in knowledge management, that and asking why.
Take those concepts, and now you're giving a speech to a large global audience. What's your first theme? What's the first thing you share with that audience when you look at specificity framework, capturing information?
The first thing would be how they need to work in their own business in a way that would give them some feeling of productivity, or how would they know they've improved? What turns them on in excelling to do something different? And in that way, you get people talking about the things that drive them for success, what makes them get up every day in the morning. And I can guarantee you that whatever that driver is, there's a knowledge management role to be played, because everybody wants to improve on something.
If you've convinced someone that it's important to change, and they understand the value of using knowledge, do we all operate with the same definition of knowledge?
No. I mean, I've learned, when I first started in knowledge management, to me I was very idealistic about the difference between knowledge, information, and data. Because you would see these consultants drawing this ladder of inference, which was, you've got some data, then you've got some information, and that turns into knowledge, and then you got this thing called wisdom. And that's a great model. That's not how people think. We don't all think linearly. We don't all think logically. And yes, that may work for some things in deductive reasoning, but in your own head, you've got all sorts of stuff.
The knowledge management and the people who help in knowledge management will work in large organizations and small organizations. Tell me the differences in how organizations, small and large, might implement some of the things you've talked about.
Well, it's a tricky question, because you would think...
I get one tricky question per interview.
Okay, well, this is one where you would think that in a small organization, maybe knowledge management isn't needed so much, because people can get together and talk. They're not separated by huge offices. They're small. They must know each other. And in that way, knowledge management practice isn't as needed, because it should occur naturally. And what we find is that's just not true.
Well, in my organization, I do things that I refer to as lunch and learns, where once a month for an hour, I buy soda and snacks, and I bring people in and I tell them what I'm doing. And hopefully it helps to engender some knowledge and move us forward. But it leads me to ask a couple of other questions, because we think about how business is transitioning today from perhaps less of the face-to-face and more of the e-business. And how are knowledge management and e-business connected or related?
Well, in two ways. One is the speed factor. If there was ever a business area that was growing fast where speed is important, it's e-business. Nobody can tell you they know the answer about e-business, because we're all doing it now and hopefully learning. So the ability to learn quickly from every change or new exchange you create, or convenience portal, or anything you do, supply chain thing in e-business, your ability to learn quickly from that will put you in a position to be able to exploit it, learn from it, and do something different again. The speed factor also means that it's now much more about doing things good enough and not perfect. Speed, not perfection, is the mantra in e-business. Why? Because they're hopefully taking an iterative approach. It's called the versioning approach. So an e-business company that's being asked to deliver something, a portal for an organization that wants to link their suppliers and buyers together, has to put in place something that is no longer going to be given a year to design and develop. They've got to do something in 3 months, which means you don't do it perfect, you do it good enough, you learn from that and you do it better, and you keep doing this in an iterative approach, and that's how you stay ahead of the game, or at least start to create a competitive playing field